Lucky Land Casino, asking people, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
Lucky? In line at the deli, I guess?
Aha, in my dentist's office. More than once, actually.
Do I have to say?
Yes, you do.
In the car before my kids' PTA meeting.
Really?
Yes.
Excuse me, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
I never win and tell.
Well, there you have it. You can get lucky anywhere, playing at LuckyLandSlots.com. Play for free right now. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
With the Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
This is your captain speaking. We've got clear runway and the weather's fine, but we're just going to circle up here a while and get lucky. No, nothing like that. It's just these cash prizes add up quick. So I suggest you sit back, keep your tray table upright, and start getting lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details. With Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Daily bonuses are waiting. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Welcome to the World of Martial Arts Television Podcast. We're back. And this episode, what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about goal setting in martial arts. Nathan, first time you ever set a goal in martial arts, and why?
It would have been in my karate days, and it was probably the first grading. I was probably looking forward to the first grading and trying to achieve that first belt. It probably wasn't a technical thing in any way, shape, or form. It was having that like external validation. That I knew that goal was coming up, and also you're surrounded by people who are also training for that as well. So everyone's looking forward to that date. Everyone's training for it. You're being told what you need to do to achieve that grade. So for me, it was probably looking for that first belt in karate in Shotokan back in the 80s.
Kurt Cornwell.
Yeah, it's funny. I was trying to think of the very first one, and I think the first one that pops into mind. My dad was my first martial art teacher. Excuse me. He was a judo guy, and so I was trying to learn just a basic hip throw, and that took me forever, especially because I was 5 and he was my age. So it's hard to throw somebody. And judo works, by the way. You still can't figure it out, but with that height and size difference, trying to manage that thing. So I remember that being a big deal to me, trying to get that down. But the actual first thing that jumped into my head was I was so obsessed with the Karate Kid that I wanted to learn from one of the people in the movie, right? And at 5, 6 years old, one day this is going to be kind of a bucket list thing, it was a huge deal to me. One day I'm going to learn from one of these guys. And during the quarantine, during the pandemic, I got to do that virtually. So it took me 30, 35 years, something like that to accomplish that goal. But I actually pulled that off, which is kind of cool. I hadn't really thought about that aspect of it till you asked. So that's cool.
My goal, first of all, my goal setting was, it's pretty hard to say this because it's confession time. It was easy. I had a hit list of people that I was going to batter the heads off. The minute I had even half the skills I needed. And then obviously when I got into karate and I saw the Karate Kid, do you know what my first goal was? To date a cheerleader like Elizabeth Shue. That is how lame I am, right? And I really, really wanted that. And then if you want to know, this occurred like this. My next goal literally was to meet Danny Santo, because I was never a Bruce Lee fan, but I saw that Way of the Warrior show once, and I was like, and that, because it was back in the day where it was like boxers don't train with karate guys, and it was that whole, one of your mates, he was a black belt, he got beat up, and then the next line was, yeah, but he didn't get time to take his shoes off, and you're like, what the actual fuck? What? They go, oh yeah, because he was wearing his shoes, he couldn't really fight because he trains in bare feet. And even I, back in the 80s, like 1986, 87, I was going, this smells suspiciously like bullshit to me. And then I saw Danny Santo, and I saw that, and that was it. So like the thing is, my first goal was like yourself, Kurt. It was amazing that it actually, that it actually came to fruition. And what I found is I've had to do goal setting, but the goal setting it's changed a little bit. Sometimes it's just, am I able to pull off this certain sweep? And it's nothing big. It certainly isn't any of this, I'm going to be able to, get my next belt or a next stripe. It's literally, am I able to pull off like a half guard sweep? So guys, Nathan Leverton, what you say?
Mick, that's exactly what I was going to ask. I was going to say, like, how has your goal setting changed over the years and during your journey? Because I remember when mine was about my own training, and then it became about other people's training. Then it became about like keeping the business running. The goals that I've had around martial arts have changed drastically over the years, from being able to tap a certain person out or catch a move or hit something in competition or anything like that, through to paying the bills at the gym. It does, and then in between that, there's the goals of getting students to achieve the things that they want to achieve and helping them set their goals and achieve their goals. And I just wondered about that journey with you guys and how your goals have changed over the years.
Can I ask you a question on that?
Yeah, of course.
I think that's an interesting point. I think we both can relate and agree with that idea that, as we age, as we mature in the art and then become teachers and maybe business owners, your goals, your priorities have to shift, especially as a business owner. That's something you have to give a lot of attention to. So that's a martial art related goal. And I think that's sort of how you phrased it. Do you still find that you're setting goals for yourself as far as the training goes, or as far as I know we all maybe don't train as much as we would like to because our priority is our students and all these different things. But I wonder, in this conversation, it's making me think if goal setting is not a good hack for some of us to make sure we're still plugging along, we're still growing individually in the practice as well.
Yeah, I don't think I have any goals myself with my own training anymore. I think it's nearly all focused around coaching other people and keeping the business running so that other people can achieve their goals in martial arts. It can, that side of things takes over your life a little bit. We all fall into this thing where we've got, we might have the skills as a martial artist, but then we have to develop the skills of dealing with finances and marketing and all these other things and that kind of stuff. And you can, obviously there are companies that can help you do all that stuff and achieve those goals, but they're usually, I've always found they're focused around kids and marketing traditional martial arts to kids. So because I've kind of had to do things myself, I ended up just setting the goals around, keeping the gym going and keeping people in there and keeping people training and helping them achieve their training or competition goals. It's funny, because I used to train competitors, I went through a whole period of these, you talk about the SMART goals, like making things specific and measurable and, attainable and realistic and time related and all those kind of things. You have these acronyms to make goals more productive. When I was training people mostly just to compete, we did a lot of that. We talked about those kind of goals, and it was all about in the training, about being able to achieve stuff in training. I find I don't do that so much anymore with the regular people. I don't know. I find maybe sometimes goal setting takes away from being in the moment a little bit, and perhaps giving people too much pressure, goals can put pressure on them. So I used to really talk about, when I had people who just wanted to compete, that's all they wanted to do in their career, they were totally into talking about goals. But I find the regular Joes who just come in and do a bit of training, that can even put them off because their goal is just to enjoy the session maybe. I don't know what you've found with setting goals for your students. Do you talk to them about their goals, or do you just kind of let them train? I don't know. What do you guys do?
What I was going to, kind of talk about, because I don't train fighters, and because we don't necessarily, we're working on one actually, but we don't have a belt system or anything. And even as a JKD, or more specifically as an MKG school, I think this is part of what we do. there's no real like objective for the training, which is to say, like, when you think of the word training, you're training for something. And so it begs the question of, well, what are you training for? Are you training for a competition, for a fight? Are you training for an imaginary potential self-defense situation? And yeah, what I like about our training is I think what we do can be applied into any of those categories. But generally speaking, my answer to that hypothetical question is we're training for the sake of training. We're training for the love of training, which is what you're talking about, with your guys that are not competitors, giving them goals or trying to encourage setting goals. Yeah, I think sometimes takes away from that. Sometimes I almost envy people that are training towards an objective because they have a thing that they're shooting towards. I've got a fight coming up, and win or lose, I'm going to go there. I'm going to do the thing. And then there's maybe some sense of like relief or decompression or whatever after the fact. You did it. Hopefully you win. And if you didn't, you still did the thing, And I always tell my students, I'm like, if you're hoping to have this big accomplishing aha situation come up, you picked the wrong art, because this is just, like, you're never going to get it, in air quotes. You're never going to know the whole thing. It just keeps going on forever. And that's the beauty of it, is it's a personal practice. It's about personal development and exploration and learning about different things and people and cultures through the practice. And so the goal, it's sort of like what's the expression I'm thinking of? Like, the journey is the destination, right? So the actual act of doing it is the goal. The goal is walking through the door for the first time. For a lot of my people, that's the biggest thing, is they worked up the nerve to actually step on the mat. That's goal accomplished.
Is that something you actually express to the class? Like, do you talk to them about the actual goal of this is being in the moment, enjoying this session, enjoying the journey? Because maybe that's something that actually should be expressed to them a little bit more.
Personally, I do probably an annoying amount. They're probably, yeah, we get it, man. All right, it's mindfulness. Can we just work out? But absolutely, because that's a big deal to me personally. I mean, not being like self-promoting, but the TEDx talk that I did was about exactly this sort of subject, and the idea of just again, the courage to step on the mat for the first time being the thing. The fact that you're here is the objective. The fact that you're here is the victory, is another better way to say that. And so I always try to shine light on that. And especially if somebody comes in for their first day and we have a really big workout, one big thing I always try to tell them is, you showed up on a day where we're going heavier than we maybe even usually do. You were not primed for this. You weren't prepared. You had no idea what you're walking into. You've never thrown a punch before, blah, 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 blah. Now we're asking you to have this massive amount of output. Even if you never come back through the doors, right? Even if you never come back, this was too much. Remember that violence happens when you're not prepared, when you're not anticipating it, when you had something else on your mind, when you weren't sure what to expect, blah, 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 blah. And you came in here and you did it, right? You had that high level of output. So you can take that with you inside and know that, hey, look, if something kicks off, I got a lot in the tank here. I got a lot I can put out. So we do try to fold those messages in all the time along the way. The idea that the experience of this is the jam inside the donut, you know what I mean? And the rest of it is just cool frosting. I don't know.
As usual, as you were talking about that, I was writing some of that down because I think there's a couple of things you did there for them. I know we've kind of gone off from goal setting a bit, we can come back, but you managed expectations and then you contextualize what they were going to experience. And that's probably better for that person than actually setting them a goal. Like, getting them in the right headspace so that they can experience it and get the most out of it and then contextualize it as well.
I'm writing this down. You said manage expectations and contextualize experience, right? Awesome.
Boys, it's so funny just as I was listening to that, because obviously myself and Kurt have talked about this a few times. The MKG method, we don't really do the belts thing. So the problem is when they come in, they go, so what am I going to get at the end of all of this? And I'm like, I don't know, peace, tranquility, a good feeling of self. And they're like, yeah, but a belt. And then I was like, That's why I brought in a grading system for me. But the crazy thing is, because I've totally embraced jiu-jitsu, the belt is everything to me now. Because it's that whole thing, you know yourself, Nathan. It's supposed to be just a piece of material around your waist. But unfortunately in jiu-jitsu, it's way more than that, because not only you're representing not just whoever gave you the belt, but the guys that you're training with at the time. And there's that whole, I know Kurt loves the tribe mentality, right? And the thing is, when we do that, you're literally putting yourself out there. I'm going to quote a Jeff Thompson line here, where Jeff used to say, stick your head over the parapet wall. You're always going to get critics, but the critic's always the guy who's never doing it, right? And I've noticed myself recently, especially when it comes to the goal setting thing, I feel quite bad about this because I'm telling guys to just embrace the process, turn up, do the training, don't worry about the external plaudits and everything like that. While me being the biggest hypocritical bastard on the planet is going, yeah, but I'm chasing that black belt, boys. I hope you realize that. And which is the truth, because unfortunately, jiu-jitsu is one of those arts that you have to be really, really selfish about. So I'm finding it's very yin and yang, and I don't want to say hypocritical, but I am. Because the thing is, it's like I'm saying to everyone else, embrace the process. It's not the destination, it's the journey. While with me, I'm literally fast tracking, balls out, the brakes aren't coming on now until I get my black belt. So Nathan, you were just about to say something.
Yeah, I think we've probably all been through the whole goal setting thing of where you learn about breaking down big goals into smaller goals and how to achieve them, and being having people that you're responsible to, so you can they can check in on whether you're doing the goals, and we've all done all that. And I got to admit, after the time, I just kind of moved away from it and left it, and haven't really been back to goal setting that much. But I did watch a video. I can't remember who the guy was. It was some tech bro doing a talk. It was like a TEDx kind of talk. And he had a method. And I've got to admit, I've used it with my guys recently, and I thought it was really interesting. And it brings together some of the stuff that we like about martial arts. So his idea is very simple. You get a piece of paper and you draw 3 columns. So it's 2 lines, you got 3 columns. The first one is experiences, the second one is growth, and the third one is contributions. So in the first column, you write all the experiences that you want to have. And obviously in martial arts, that's the things that have meant the most to us, the experiences we have, the places we've been, the people we've trained with, the people we've met. You put all your experiences in that first column. And then the second column, you put the growth. What growth do you need to do? What skills do you need to learn? What actions do you need to take? What do you need to do to make those experiences occur? And then the third one is, while are you doing that, what contributions can you do? Like, what can you give back as you do it? And he was saying in his business, he has them fill these out, all the experiences they want to have, all the growth they need to do, and all the contributions they can give. And then they all put them up on a wall, and they look and they see if they could help each other out with any areas of growth or contribution and things like that. And I found that actually speaks more to me than the traditional goal setting of I want to win this tournament, I have to break it down into these, or I want to, achieve this belt and break it down. Is actually the experiences are the big thing that we take from this.
Yeah, I really liked. I definitely wrote that down too. I even made the chart because it feel to me, you reference goals sometimes applying a sense of pressure, and I generally speaking have a hard time with some of that. And so sometimes goals feel, like a lot of the stuff that you are talking about, where it's sort of here's how to achieve your goals. It's very formulaic, right? And it feels it's just not organic. It doesn't feel natural. It's sort of like I don't know. I mean, I like a good hack or a good cheat code, but it doesn't feel natural to me in that way. Where this is just actually putting everything up on the wall and looking at, oh yeah, this is me in front of me. You know what I mean? I can kind of quantify it if I need to, but otherwise, this gives you a clear. It's just like a practice of introspection, really. And the part that's fascinating is the shared aspect of it. Okay, look, this is your goal. I know how to do that. Even with my own students, I bet there's personal and professional projects or creative projects that they could help each other with that have nothing to do with martial art. I always think in terms of like, I like objectives rather than goals, right? Which is maybe semantics, but I think of like objectives, goals, and dreams being maybe three different categories. So like a goal is something really specific. I want to be able to lift this amount of weight. I want to be able to get a black belt. I want, you know what I mean? Whatever. It's a really specific thing. Dream is maybe the opposite of that. It's maybe very abstract or very big and grandiose. Where objectives is like, I want to grapple more. I want to like take more time for myself, even though I've got 3 kids now, to get on the mat as much as possible. And when I'm there, I want to try to work this body of material as much as I can. You know what I mean? So it's a little more loose. It's a little more go with the flow, and it suits my lifestyle that I'm in right now, as a father of 3 young kids and that kind of thing. So that I can kind of keep that in mind and go, look, every time I'm at the gym, I'm going to try to do a couple of these objectives. I'm going to make sure I get my students to be able to do X, Y, Z, and I'm going to make a little bit of time for myself to do this thing as well. And then that's great, as opposed to everything is always in the direction of this potential future goal, and nothing is really in the moment. Well, what happens if life gets in the way and you don't reach that goal? And we see a lot of preaching of, if you really care, then you show up. If it really, you'll skip a meal or skip out on your family if you have to, because if you really care, like, I don't buy that. I don't subscribe to that. That doesn't work for me. And I don't think my family would want to be around that dude if I was that way too much, but having
sorry to interrupt there.
Yeah, no, get into it.
As you were talking about it, it just made me laugh because, like, owning a business and being around martial arts, you always get hit with all the entrepreneur kind of stuff and business kind of stuff. And it's always like morning routines and, when I've seen stuff about goal setting and objectives, there's very little flexibility, and it's nearly always aimed at like 20-year-old athlete who's professional with no kids, no no responsibilities, nothing. And you just like, and it's like, oh yeah, if you want to achieve the goals, you need to get up at 4 a.m. and do this and meditate for half an hour and do this. And it's like, it's either like tech bros who are like millionaires, or it's like, professional athletes who are like 20 and have no health issues or anything like that.
Post a picture of your watch at 4 a.m. so everyone knows how dedicated you are. And all
that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's like when your plans hit real life, real life tends to fuck shit up a bit.
For this thing of like, all you have to do is choose, right? Just make a choice and you'll do it. And I'm sorry, it's just not that simple. If it's that simple for the individual, God bless you, that's awesome. You know what I mean? But it sure ain't for me. As we age and mature, the idea that our priorities shift, or probably have to shift, or dare I say should shift over time. And I had never thought of it till this conversation, but I think the change in priorities is specifically what impacts personally the goals that I'm after. And I wonder if it's not a good practice for somebody trying to reach their goals to actually stop ahead of time and take a look at what their priorities are, whether it's around that activity or just in their life in general, which is probably more to my point. And then go, okay, now that I have a good sense of what really matters to me, what are my goals? As opposed to, if you're like me, I'm impulsive. One night my goal is to become a coach in this thing. The other night my goal is to get a degree in this thing. Now my goal is to be on a TV show, and now my goal is to get a good night's rest. You know what I mean? It's like, so if I stop and go, yeah, but okay, what really matters to you? Now go forward from there. And I just would be curious to hear your take on that.
Life getting in the way of some of the goals that I wanted to achieve, I feel that knocked it out of me a little bit. So I did shift my goals probably to safer stuff and to things that allow me to just maintain where I'm at. So a lot of my goals now are about like just maintaining the business and like keeping financially afloat and that kind of thing, rather than the kind of goals I would have had before about for my own training or doing something much bigger. I think as you get older, I don't know, like how it's probably awful for me to say, but I feel like you run out of time a bit. So I don't think now like about starting some massive project, because it's like, well, I don't, if it takes a long while and a couple of goes to do it, is probably going to be, I'm going to be getting older when it starts to peak. So I don't think about taking on massive stuff anymore.
But see, isn't this interesting? Because then, like we can hear what some of your priorities are. Your priority is stability. Your priority is, not to put words in your mouth or like psychoanalyze you, but you're talking about.
Oh no, 100% stability and security is what I crave. Yeah.
But for your business, for yourself, that kind of thing. Conversely, and problem, I'm sure to a fault, I tend to go, I'm running out of time. I'm 40 now, whatever big project I want to do, it's go time. So let's start 6 of them right now, because you know what I mean? And probably not be able to accomplish any of them for that reason. But experiencing that sense of pressure in a different way means we have slightly different priorities through that experience, right?
So how are we going to shift this to the advice to the younger self?
Off the top of my head, we're talking about how as you age, grow, have new experiences, your priorities and your goals shift.
Yeah.
Looking back at that self with what you know now, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I tend to maybe it's probably a bit it's self-indulgent, but it's maybe kind of negative. But I sometimes do this thing of thinking of like, if I'm like old on my deathbed, looking back at me now, what would I think? What would I be like? Oh man, you really missed it. You should have spent more time with these people, or that sort of stuff, that like hindsight in the moment sort of thing. And so
maybe you can then use that to set goals to do those things, like,
Right. Sometimes your goals, when you're in pursuit of your goal, you kind of realize that, especially once you get it, it's maybe not what you actually wanted, or along the way as you pursue it, you start to realize, maybe it's in the area of what I want, but come to find out, really this version of it is a little more suited to where I'm at today, that kind of thing. What's your feeling or experiences you had with being too rigid in achieving your goals, or trying to make sure you stay a little more open to the experience?
Life is what happens when you're too busy making plans, right? You have these goals, and if you're not, again, I'm going to use a very, very hip sort of phrase at the moment, which is behavioral flexibility, right? If you haven't got behavioral flexibility, especially in martial arts, and I certainly don't want this to sound judgmental, but we all know it, right? If I say the stereotypical martial artist who's on his 3rd or 4th marriage, right? And you look at that guy, you go, yeah. Do you know what that is? Because that showed you didn't have any behavioral flexibility when it came to, should you be training, shouldn't you? I remember years ago, Terry Barnett saying to me once about how one of the things that he was really, really, he didn't have many regrets, but one of them was that he just trained too much, at the cost of other relationships. And I remember, like, I was deep into martial arts at this stage. I just really got my foothold in the JKD world. And I'm like, there is nothing that's going to get between me and going to Minneapolis every year. So there was years I went there where really I shouldn't have gone, to tell you nothing but the truth. And I'm not saying that it was I'm not saying that financially we weren't in a good place to be there. But the thing is, there was other things I could have done with the money. You know what I'm saying? But I was selfish about it. And this is the thing that always gets me about martial arts. Yeah. Anybody who's successful, they always say that. And again, that varying degrees of, from Goggins to a Poundland Goggins. You know what I mean? So you got the guy who's like, Goggins on a budget. Well, if you really want it, how much do you really want it? And then it's like, yeah, but I don't really want to go home and eat a menu master meal for one every night on my own, because guess what? My last 3 girlfriends have left me. So what the situation is where you were asking about goal setting, I've had to really, really get myself recently and, just check myself, because sometimes I have put training before more important things, and for what reason? I'm a hobbyist, really. And I'm quite good, but I'm only good for a hobbyist. And it's like, are you prepared to risk all of that? And that's the thing that I'm seeing, especially guys that said, I'm a few years older than you guys. So when we were talking about, where you said, Nathan, I'm at that point now, and I realise, that I'm running out of time. And as I said to you, I realise I'm running out of time, so that's why I'm doing everything. You know what I mean? So I'm not ready to be a guy eating Werther's originals, and I'm not ready for that just yet. And when I do, I hope to God. Now this sounds really bad, but I hope to God that I will be tranquil enough and at peace with myself enough to not go full Ernest Hemingway and be 62 years of age and still think that I'm 40. You know what I mean? But that's the thing that I'm learning in martial arts now, more than anything. So it's the goal settings had to completely change. Now it's the Danny Nosanto, keep moving.
A lot of what you're talking about is like hindsight perspective, right? You know what I mean? The things that you've learned along the way.
Totally.
And that this idea that like, I always think it's good to be passionate, but passion can burn up everything around you too, so you have to be able to kind of control that fire, have a controlled burn for whatever it is that's burning inside you. And as we get older, hopefully we learn better strategies to do that. And so you're talking and referring to a time of, like you said, going back and forth to Minneapolis for training, and there's probably other things you could have or maybe should have done with that money. With the idea of your priorities shifting as you grow, when you look back to your younger self, is there advice or any sort of perspective you would want to offer that younger version of Mick or Nathan, of like, look, man, I know you think it's going to be this, but now that I'm here, I'm telling you it's that. Is there any sort of advice or perspective you would want to offer your younger self based on the goals you've either accomplished or didn't accomplish or decided to pivot away from?
Yeah, not that I would have listened, but I mean, I wish I'd cared less what other people said. I wish I'd taken more risks, and I really wish I'd leveraged any achievements that I had more. So like when I was writing for the magazines, I wish I'd done the book. When I was, training like the pro fighters, I wish I'd leveraged that into like a bigger gym, maybe. Maybe moved it into like a second stream of income, like some online stuff or things like that. So I wish I just would have taken more opportunities, taken more risks. I think that would have been the main advice. Because some of those stuff,
even better, you're doing it now with a podcast.
Right? Yeah, I do it now with a podcast. But some of these things, some of those moments pass. Like, especially if you become an early adopter on things, like you should get in early and get out fairly early, like to make the best of things. And I got in early on a lot of stuff, and then didn't leverage it, and then stayed in them. So there's quite a few areas of life that I got in pretty early and just didn't do much with it. So it would have been take more risks and leverage any achievements a little bit more. But then again, I've always liked people skills, so none of it would probably ever come through anyway. Maybe done something about that. Maybe gone and got like a diagnosis for ADHD or something a bit early. I don't know.
I can't believe this. By the way, I'm listening to this from Nathan Leviton, one of the most engaging individuals that I know to hold a conversation with. One of my favorite people on the planet to hang out with, and I just don't get it, dude. If I bear in mind, if I had those matinee idol looks that Nathan Leviton had, I would have left martial arts years ago. And I'd have got Henry Cavill's job or something, I don't know, some shit like that. With me, like my whole thing is, the advice I would give to a younger me was, guess what, Mick, it ain't all that, right? That would be the one I'd give, because it's the whole thing. It's like go in and I've taught on the biggest shows in the UK, taught martial arts. I've always stayed true to myself. That's the one good thing that I have done. I've always known exactly what I am, which is I can tell a decent bit of a joke. As I've said before, I'm a Poundland Joe Rogan. Unfortunately, Rogan's cornered the market now, and there's not that much elk to hunt around Coventry, unfortunately. So I'm pretty fucked on that one. But the thing is, I know exactly now what martial arts gave me, and it isn't what I thought it was going to give me. Yeah, it finally did give me a centre without sounding homina. But, it gave me the best friends that I've got in the world. Every friend that I've got of any value is linked tangentially or directly to martial arts. I met my wife through martial arts. She didn't train, but one of her mates did. That's how we met. and like, you know, what I thought I was going to get at. And I remember distinctly going, oh man, I'd love to be famous one day, you know, in martial arts. The problem is being famous in martial arts world, as I said before, is like being rich in Monopoly. Like what it is, it's like when you're playing Monopoly, it doesn't work that much in the real world. And the other thing about fame is, you know, Jeffrey Dahmer was famous. That's what people don't understand. It's like, it's fame, but like, as you were saying, Nathan, how do you leverage that? You know, if I was looking at success financially, you know, I'm a way better plasterer. You know, as I always say to Neil Simpkin all the time, I am the Roger Gracie of plastering. And I truly believe that. And it's not as cool as being able to, you know, I don't know, be in MMA right now. Because being in MMA right now seems to be the coolest thing in the world, right? But again, and I don't want to put a downer on this, we haven't seen the ramifications yet of all of the damage, right? And this is all the damage that these guys have had. And that's the one piece of advice I won't give to me, because guess what? I dodged it well quick. Like, you got to remember, I've said, you guys heard me say this before, when everyone else was doing bunny hops in the gym, I was looking at that going, that shit is going to ruin your knees. I remember my first karate instructor, Andy Margaret, saying, why don't you bunny hop? And I went, because I want to keep my knees when I'm 50. And they're all now getting knee replacements. And I'm like, yeah, big deal. And the other one is when we were doing all that reality-based training, everyone else was like, Mick, you got to get in there. And I went, look, I nearly got knocked out once, didn't like it, got choked out thousands of times. And in the end, I decided, guess what? The only way to get out of that is to avoid it. You know what I mean? Do the training. It's like, Nathan, I've heard you say it, and I think it's a John Kavanagh line. It was how to upgrade the software without ruining the hardware. I remember you saying this years ago, right? And again, I will take the fucking Pepsi challenge with nearly every 53-year-old out there who's got as many miles on the clock as me. No knee replacements yet, no joint replacements, little bit of arthritis, as you can see, the jiu-jitsu fingers there, that isn't very good for you. But there's a price to pay for everything. So the advice I would give is, don't take yourself too seriously. Guess what? What you think you're going to get isn't really that good anyway. And what price are you prepared to pay for that? You know, there has to be more out of martial arts. You know, there's Vunak, and I can't believe I'm quoting Paul Vunak here, but it's like Paul said, he goes, if you spend 20 years of your life to do something that may or may not last any more than 20 seconds, and all you've got is that out of it, you've just wasted 20 years of your life, man. Yeah, and I know that's I don't want to like put a downer on it, but yeah, there has to be more out of it. So my advice to a young Mick Tully is exactly what I fucking did do. Have loads of fun. Don't take any of it seriously, because at the end of the day, you're rolling around the floor in your pajamas with your mates or spandex. And both of those sound like iffy for a heterosexual dude. You know what I'm saying, right? But guess what, guys? Just have fun. As you said before, Nathan, we're cosplayers, really. You know what I mean? We're LARPers. Anyway, there endeth the sermon on Mick Tully. Guess what? Enjoy life. That's it.
I guess I'll go. Yeah, I agree with you. One of the things that I was thinking, trying to like put some thoughts together on this, because I mean, the amount of advice I'd want to give to my younger self, like Nathan, I wouldn't have followed any of it. People have been kind enough to give me sound advice my whole life, and I've just always been like, the amount of times I've said, I'm just the kind of person that needs to learn the hard way. Like, that's a badge of honor or something. That's a stupid thing to do, but I kind of remain that way nevertheless. But I would say one of the things I would point out is that joy is actually part of this practice, or it should be, and it can be. And that was never a consideration of mine in my younger years, when I was really dreaming about being a martial artist, or being able to see the world through this practice, or teach different people, have these different experiences. I would have never thought of joy as part of it. And at this point, it's the reason for my practice. It's my pursuit. And it's sort of the highest level, in my opinion, right? It can be achieved on day one. That's something that's really cool with martial art, is you can find joy in this on your first day. And I also believe it's the highest application of this practice. It's the highest level of black belt. The idea that joy is possible through these experiences, it's cool. It's ever present if you're lucky enough to be in an environment that's conducive to that, which is sort of another thing, is this sense of what I would call victory. Having watched so many martial art movies in the 80s growing up, there's always a scene at the end where Daniel LaRusso is being lifted up on people's shoulders, and it's like slow motion cheering, and we did it, and pause for credits, and it's this big, Rocky throwing his fist in the air on the top of the steps in front of the museum or whatever. I think I was pursuing that moment, that idea, this larger than life thing, maybe massive ego, even as a kid, of like, I just want to be celebrated, but just wanting to have this sort of big win feeling, and realizing now that that's never going to come. That's not part of it, right? That experience is something that exists in the movies, and for precious few people who have to sacrifice things to achieve that I'm not willing or interested in sacrificing. What this has actually been about for me is relationships. And that's where the joy part exists, right? What I've gotten from this is not a sense of identity, though there is part of that, I guess, but a sense of belonging, a sense of community, a sense of chosen family. Even this experience, being able to have this show with you guys, having relationships with people that are in another part of the world, right? And that's for a kid that grew up where and when I did, that's not a normal thing at all. And to know I have friendships and relationships all over the world is definitely not something I saw coming. And I think it's something that as a young person, I would have been pretty excited about, right? That's something I would have taken to heart if I told, whether it was 10 or 20-year-old me, hey, just keep doing what you're doing, because you're going to get to this point where you're going to be lucky enough to know people all over the world. That's beautiful, man. So I think I would have been excited about that, because I definitely am now. The other things would be the sense of like, I think I always brought to the table a need to prove something, whether it's to myself or other people. Like Nathan, you talked about worrying about what other people think and that sort of stuff. That's definitely something I've struggled with throughout my life, in a sense of needing to prove something. One thing I've learned about that is, it's not that you don't have to prove anything to yourself, you're great, or you don't have to prove anything to other people, who cares? It's just that whole dynamic doesn't really exist. I'm never going to prove something to someone else, because people are just busy doing their own thing. They're busy trying to prove something to their self. They're busy with their own neuroses and their own priorities, their own goals or whatever. People aren't just, this is something I get from Rick Fay, of like, at one point, I know he told me, like, you might be surprised to know that not everyone in the room is sitting there watching you, like nobody cares, that's not part of the equation here. It's part of your vantage point. Fine. Right. It's part of your perspective. But the fact is, it doesn't have to be, and that can very much get in the way. And for me, it really got in the way. And I went down some dark roads and did some things that in hindsight, I'm glad I had some of the training and experiences that I did. But when I was told by people who cared about me, hey, you don't have to go down this road, they certainly were right, and again, I needed to learn the hard way. But having done that, I would guide my younger self in a different way than I went. Self-defense, for example, is pretty relative to your lifestyle, but for the one or two hypothetical things that might happen to anybody at random. But, how good are you at, we want to be Jason Bourne, you walk into the room and you know who's the bad guy in the room. Like, I'm going to like a diner having eggs with my kids. That's not really a thing, like there's no, secret spy assassin in here waiting to take. I don't need to have that level of input to live where I live and when I live, and keeping things contextual is probably more healthy. And just understanding that, like, this is an opportunity you have, we get to train, and that's a pretty great thing. And just continuing to like live in that space, I think is a good recipe going forward.
The joy thing, man, that's the one thing that we do forget every now and again. And it was like you were saying, it's funny because I don't have to stay in or not. You can if you want to. There's a guy, he hit me up years ago to help him on a mentoring program that he's got. And he's a really, really good guy. And his mentoring program's like, it's a great mentoring program. But when I looked at it first, I wasn't, nowadays I'd jump into it. But at the time I wasn't, because it felt a bit too come by Irish for me. You know what I mean? Where I just thought, it's a load of dudes sitting around, like, you know, hugging it all out and stuff. And then I see how much work he's done. And then randomly I get another message from this guy. It just came up and I went, I recognise the name. It was only when I went through the messages that I realised who it was. He turned up training on Monday night, and it was like he said, Tuesday night. And he turned up and he said to me, he goes, Mick, I had to pull over in the car and get sick. And I went, really? Why? He went, just the anticipation of going in there. And like came in, we had a really good time, did some Carly, did some JKD, did some grappling. I've never done any grappling before. I said, you'll be fine, you'll be cool. Hit some pads at the end of it. As he was coming out the door, I said, how do you feel? And he went, I want to get sick now, but I want to get sick with excitement. He said, I just cannot believe, because I kept saying to him, I said, dude, what are you? And like, so you know me, I walk past, I hit people with a padded stick and I said, what, tell me you're a savage. And tell me you're a savage. And I hit them across, and said, I'm a savage, Mick. And we go, and then he came out of it and I went, listen, mate, now you're able to handle 99.9% of the shit that's going to get thrown at you out there now. And he was like, I just had no idea. And that was like after 2 hours. And like the look of joy on his face. And it was literally, it was like, you know, when you turn a switch on with somebody and they realize that it's actually there. And I went, look, mate, don't delude yourself. Well, let's find out. No, let's never find out if it actually works. I said, this is the anti-lock braking system in your car. The minute you have to find out if that works, you've got bigger fucking problems than your brakes, mate. You know what I mean? And he was like, oh, wow. But as you were saying it, Kurt, about the joy thing, we do forget that. And then you have to, and again, I'm dead lucky because I have none of the financial responsibilities. I turn up, I rent the space in Coventry. I teach at Gracie Barra Birmingham. Yeah, I get paid to do this. You know, that's the one thing, you know, I'm dead lucky in that respect. But yeah, man, it was mad.
Like the joy part, not everybody, you know, like jibes with that. Not everybody feels that or thinks that matters, or, you know, probably maybe have negative opinion of it. And I understand that. That's fine. You know, martial arts is malleable enough that everybody kind of takes all kinds and gives to everybody. But I do think, you know, we were talking off air about this sort of like hindsight in the moment, you know, imagining if you're on your deathbed, what you would think about or say to yourself right now, you know, that as a thought experiment. And I think if all of my training had always been, and it always remained about, you know, like real, like critical event skill development and real violence, and just really getting deep into that, the, you know, predator mindset stuff and psychology of violence and all these different things that still fascinate me, but more recreationally, I guess. If I had stayed too deep down that path, I feel like I'd look back and go, oh no, I never had this massive violent altercation thing that happened. And so like, it was all for nothing, you know? So best case scenario is you utilize these super skills or whatever, you know, which means something terrible has happened, right? Something really, really terrible has happened. That's best case scenario as far as justifying all that time spent in training those things. Or worst case scenario is you wasted all of that time because you were training something that wasn't really relevant to your life experiences, where if joy had always been part of it and you were able to pick up those skills along the way because you enjoyed the practice, then in hindsight, you'd go, I had a life of joy and XYZ did or didn't happen along the way.
Kurt, you just said something. As you were saying it, my brain just went to a completely different place. It's exactly the same mindset as the guy who's worked all his life, paid all his taxes, paid into his pension. And pension's off at 65, 67, dies at 68. But it's the truth, right? And it's the whole thing. And it's that, you know, it's the mindset of, you know, have I got, is it scarcity or is it abundance?
Well, this has been a great catch up with you guys. You know, it's been a little while since we did one of these, so hopefully we'll continue to do more frequently going forward. I know for me personally, not to be too on the nose, but having a show like this and having conversations like this that we can share with other people has genuinely always been a goal of mine and a dream of mine. So it's you know, it's funny in this moment to realize, like, hey, here we are talking about goals, and this conversation is me achieving a goal, which is pretty cool. So appreciate you guys being a part of the show, and to everyone who listens and supports. Thank you for that. If you are a regular listener of the show, please let people know that we're out here. That is, I think, an interesting program in the martial art world, where we're sharing some introspection and some perspectives, and trying to just generate good conversation about what this practice is for so many different people all over the world. Hence the name World of Martial Art. It's not just about all the different styles in the world, but it's about all of the different people and places and ideas that exist in this practice all over the planet. So let your friends know, and you can check us out on YouTube and obviously wherever you find podcasts, social media, individually, and for the show itself. And we will see you for the next one. Thanks, guys.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
It is Ryan here, and I have a question for you. What do you do when you win? Like, are you a fist pumper, a woohooer, a hand clapper, a high fiver? I kind of like the high five, but if you want to hone in on those winning moves, check out Chumba Casino. At ChumbaCasino.com, choose from hundreds of social casino style games for your chance to redeem serious cash prizes. There are new game releases weekly, plus free daily bonuses. So don't wait. Start having the most fun ever at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.